Hello, comrades. So, I was looking at a discussion on Austrian Maoist Discord server between him and two other Mao-tubers, those being GothCritic1980 and Jules Annan, who are linked in the sidebar of my channel. Anyway, they were looking at a Tumblr meme, pictured above. At the bottom, it said something about how, oh, we wouldn't be losing if it weren't for all the splits in the party. And they were all talking about how obviously bullshit and programmatic that claim is. Upon seeing this, a light bulb went ding in my head, and I went, shit, I should do a quick vid on that. So, this video is on the topic of splits. Splits are notorious for happening in the communist movement, and there have been 6 major splits throughout its history. Those being 1. The split in the First International between the communists and anarchists. 2. The split in the Second International between the communists and the opportunists. 3. The split in the Third International between the communists and the Trotskyists. 4. The Sino-Soviet split. 5. The Sino-Albanian split. And 6. The split in the Rim. The 3 that are most talked about are splits 1, 3, and 4. Nobody really complains about split 3. Maoists say good riddance to the Trotskyists, and the Trotskyists gladly say goodbye to the so-called Stalinists. 1 and 4 are the ones most lamented. Why is it that the split between the black and red is so lamented? Upon its occurrence are cries of sectarianism and it killed left unity, and those crying such hark their reasons to the infamous Bismarck quote, "Crowned heads, wealth, and privilege, they will tremble should ever again the black and red unite." Whether or not Bismarck actually said this is debatable, but the quote largely represents what left unity folks think on this notorious split. They think as if this put a division which killed socialism once and for all. But let's analyze the reality here. Where has the communist movement gone since then? It has only progressed. Yes, it has suffered its failures. For every step forward, there has been 2 steps back. But overall, Marxism is what has made leaps and bounds. It not only strikes fear into the hearts of the bourgeoisie, but has made nightmares of capitalists abroad become reality. Where has anarchism gone since then? It has degenerated into something which holds little relevance overall. The only places where it has held any relevance is in the imperialist countries, and even then, it is largely an aesthetic facade of what is, at its heart, merely radical liberalism. Clearly, the split did nothing to harm communism whatsoever. It was merely the natural result of the growing irreconcilability of 2 very different trends. The Sino-Soviet split is an even more complex topic, one that could warrant its own video. Those who whine about it act as if it doomed communism in the 20th century. This is of course false. The split was not a minor difference between the 2, but rather it was over the difference between communism and revisionism. Khrushchev, in his seizure of power, had begun a process of dismantling socialism, of building a new Russian empire. I cannot go that far into how this was actually happening. As I said earlier, this is a topic of such complexity and detail that it would need an entire video to go over. The simple truth here is that this was no minor difference. If Mao had not split from Khrushchev, we would have seen the fall of China to revisionism much earlier, and see it turned into a semi-colony of Soviet social imperialism. It was imperative for the continuation of the communist movement at a level where it would still stay strong for a while longer, that Khrushchevite revisionism be combated. And if it weren't for such, we would have never learned the solution to growing revisionism. The other splits, of course, followed a similar manner. If the Bolsheviks had not fully rid themselves of the influence of the opportunists, we would have never seen the Russian Revolution come when it did. The Albanian split was necessary to allow Chinese revisionism to be combated, even though in the end Albania succumbed to revisionism that had grown out of Hoxha's dogmatism. And it was necessary for opportunism, of course, to be combated in the revolutionary internationalist movement. Nearly every major split has seen the communist movement only grow, only fight against opportunism, and every major split only came from smaller splits. Would this fight against the Second International's opportunism be led by Lenin if the Bolsheviks hadn't split from the opportunism of the Mensheviks?
Metaphysics, Julius!
Would the Third International be saved from Trotskyism had it not already been combated in the USSR? How would the ongoing revolution in Turkey persist if it weren't for the removal of opportunists from the party? How would the PCP have been reorganized if the left line hadn't combated Artemio's opportunism? Would we still see a Communist Party of the Philippines if it weren't for the splitting of the opportunists during the Second Great Rectification campaign? To worry about splits, to think they kill the communist movement, is an absolutely incorrect position. Splits from the communist movement are largely the result of 2-line struggle, a struggle between the revolutionary line and the opportunist line. To think that this is what harms the communist movement views history as being pushed by individual groups, rather than correctly viewing history as being pushed by the masses. The communist movement relies not on a monolithic party, where all trends, no matter how vulgar and destructive, can persist, but rather on a connection to the masses. a connection which right opportunists only wish to break with. If we lament about us splitting from right opportunists, or of the right opportunists splitting from us, how are we to ever properly stay connected with the working class, and push them towards revolution and communism? Splits of this type which happened historically, and splits of this kind which will most certainly appear in the future, are necessary for the growth of the international communist movement. I know not everyone watching this thinks that splits are killing communism. I know there are many who will share my views. But to those who hold this viewpoint on splits, I am obviously talking to you. And at the end of all of this, I merely have one last thing to say. Stop whining about splits. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more on Maoism, I suggest subscribing to me. And I suggest checking out the channels I have linked in the sidebar of my channel as well. See you next time!